Apple shareholders met today to discuss the company's priorities. CNET News executive editor Ian Sherr attended the meeting and joins us now to fill us in. So, Ian, what were really the top items on the agenda for Apple's board and for the investors?
Thing is that there were two shareholder proposals on top of the normal stuff of re-electing the board and their accounting firm. The two proposals were, one was a little wonky. It was about how many people that the shareholders can put up for election to the board. And then the other thing, which really got a lot of conversation going, was about ideological diversity on the board. And there was this conversation that flared up about how the ideological makeup of tech companies in Silicon Valley, obviously being in California, was an issue for some shareholders and something they were worried about.
But does this debate around diversity reflect really a larger problem for Silicon Valley?
It absolutely does. I mean, one of the interesting things going on here is that you've seen for the last couple of years a real kind of increase in the conversation about women and racial diversity and how a lot of tech companies are primarily run by white men. And this backlash is happening that's also very interesting, that is coming from the conservative end, not only driven by stuff like concern that Facebook and YouTube and Twitter might be reducing the voice of conservative people on their platforms, but also this larger conversation about, hey, the tech industry is in a blue state in a very liberal area, and maybe these people are making decisions that are having wide-ranging impacts and concerning people who don't agree with them politically. And so this is what flared up in the conversation. One example that they brought up was that Apple had donated apparently $1 million to the Southern Poverty Law Center after the Charlottesville protests in 2017. And what was brought up here is that this shareholder believes that the SPLC is a hate group. The SPLC, by the way, tracks hate groups across the United States. But it underscores how politics has really become a key issue in the tech industry.
And in terms of products, Apple had some ups and downs recently. What did the company highlight as their recent successes?
Yeah, one of the ones that they really wanted to point out was the Apple Watch. And we've written on CNET a couple of times now about how health-related devices are really starting to come into their own. And especially the Apple Watch has been doing particularly well in this area. You may remember that last year they updated it with a new version that will actually has an ECG monitor in it, or EKG, however you want to call it. And they've actually apparently saved a number of lives of people who the Apple Watch noted that their heart rate was irregular. They went to a doctor, and it saved them. They also pointed out, Tim Cook, the CEO, brought up how the AirPods, which are the wireless headphones that they sell, have really become a cultural phenomenon. And he said he likened it to how when the iPod was first really taking off, those headphones really became popular too.
And where do you think they'll face the toughest competition moving forward?
You know, it's going to be really interesting. I think there's a lot of concern right now about where Apple is headed. You know, the iPhone turned it into a blockbuster company, one of the most valuable companies on earth, at one point the most valuable. And there's this longer conversation going on about what happens after the iPhone. You see a lot of tech companies right now responding. You saw people like Huawei and Samsung showing off foldable phones. This was a big new idea that came out during a Barcelona Mobile World Congress last week. And we're going to see whether or not this continues as a trend. Apple itself has a patent on this idea, but we haven't really seen it pushed yet.
And what have they said about privacy and security? That's been a big issue.
Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, has really been pushing this idea, partially because it's become kind of a marketing thing for them. You know, they've been able to say, look, we want to sell you a device and we're going to charge you what we charge you, but after that, we're not going to try and make advertising off you. And that separates him from Google and Facebook and all these other companies that might make, you know, their software might be in your phones or whatever, but really do separate them from offering advertisers an ability to get information on you and track you. Mm-hmm. So he really pushed this idea. He said that he believes privacy is enshrined in the Constitution and something that the tech industry really needs to take more seriously.
Ian Sherr, thank you so much, Ian.
Thanks for having me.